going on, you guys, and welcome to the channel. Hope everybody's having an absolutely fantastic week. Today we're going to be taking a look at a few parts that I actually found on the side of the road for free. We got notification in the mail from our local e-waste saying that they were looking to pick up any and all electronics that are not being used. If you're not using it, throw it in the trash. The e-waste company will come and pick it up. So I went out, I started scouting, I found a bunch of good stuff, along with a few parts that I got from my local PC shop. So with that being said, before we get into the video, I want to thank all my new subscribers. You guys, we are on the road to 500 subs. I can't freaking wait. This is so cool. Keep in mind that once we hit 500 subs and 3,000 watch hours, which we are just over halfway to the watch hour mark, I will be doing multiple PC giveaways. When it comes to the PC giveaways, you guys will be able to find all the details in the Discord. So make sure and join the Discord to see the requirements. With that being said, let's go ahead. Let's see what it is that we're working with. All right, folks. So here is what we are dealing with. We have a ton of RAM modules. I haven't really had time to see what the specs are on all these modules, but these will definitely come handy in the future or for this build. Down here at the very bottom, we do have some Ballistics Sport VLP by Crucial. So I did actually use a couple of these sticks in a previous build that I did, so it's pretty cool that I ended up with the same pair again. So this is definitely cool. I'm probably going to choose these. I hope that they work. Next up, we got our motherboard. It looks like we're working with an AMD A6-3650. I know that this launched somewhere around 2011. Then we got our motherboard. It's an F1A55-M Plus R2.0. This does have crossfire, which means we can actually run 2 graphics cards if we would like. So this seems like it'll be pretty solid. Next up, this is what I got from my PC shop. We have a Radeon HD 5770. This is 1GB GDDR5. I do believe that this launched between 2009 and 2011. Not entirely sure. And then we have our case here. Super cool retro style case, along with a huge fan. It does have a power supply as well, so huge bonus. So I'm gonna go ahead, get you guys set up, and we are going to get right into building this thing. So before we actually start getting into building this thing, I do have my RAM sticks picked out. So it looks like this is going to be a 16 gig kit. These do run at 1600 megahertz, so this should be perfect. The motherboard is definitely crusty and dusty, so it's going to need a nice, good clean. Definitely going to need some thermal paste on there, as per usual. Our cooler looks like it's in pretty damn good shape. It's got a tiny bit of dust, but it's not bad at all. Should be perfectly fine. We'll give that a quick clean as well. And then when it comes to our card, it's actually fairly clean. There is a little bit of dust in here. I think we might actually go ahead and get this apart as well and get some new thermal paste on there. And then of course we will be tearing down this case to get all the dust and whatever is in there cleaned out, just to be safe. And this is going to be a candidate for the PC giveaway, so I want it to be as good as it can be for whoever wins it. So let's get into it. Alright, so we got our case laid down on the operating table. We're going to go ahead, get this panel off, and see what exactly is going on inside this thing. By the way, this does not have any distinguishing markers on it letting me know what kind of case this is. So hopefully we might be able to find something on the inside here. So thankfully it does have these finger-tight screws on the back. Super easy to get off. So let's go ahead and pull this off and see what we got. Alright, so on the inside of the front panel, we do have a massive fan here. Not sure if this is an LED fan or not, but this should definitely provide excellent cooling for whatever we decide to put in here. So for now, we'll go ahead and set this off to the side. I want to see what kind of power supply it is that we are working with. So based off what I can see on the side here, it does look like it's a Thermaltake. Not entirely sure the wattage on it yet, but we'll go ahead and get it out of here and see exactly what we're dealing with. Alright, so it looks like we are working with a Thermaltake TR2 700 watt. This thing definitely feels quite beefy. It's very heavy. Not quite seeing a rating on it, but I'm sure it's in front of my face somewhere and I'm just blind like that. but definitely a nice power supply. It's got a little bit of dust on the inside. I'll go ahead and use some canned air and just go ahead and blow that out as best I can. But definitely not bad. So we'll go ahead and set this off to the side and see what else we got going on in here. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the fans. We do have a back fan and a front fan. But before I do that, I see that we have a little something going on right here. See if I can't get this out of here. It looks like we have one of our back pieces actually wedged between the platform for the motherboard and the back panel. We're going to go ahead and have to pull the back panel off real quick to get this thing out of here. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get our back panel off here. It does seem like it's quite stuck on here. It does not want to come off. Ah, there we go. Alright, so with that being off, let's go ahead and flip this thing back over. Okay, so even with that back panel off, we do still have this piece stuck in here, so we're going to flip it over once again and see if I can't get this platform for our motherboard out. Alright, so it looks like our platform came nice and free. Alright, so we got our top screws out here. Let's go ahead and pull out our bottom ones. Alright, easy freaking peasy. Alright, let's go ahead and get this guy on out of here. And there's the piece that I was talking about. Just chilling. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this and continue with the teardown of this and get this thing all nice and cleaned out. Alright, so now that we have our platform for our motherboard out, we're going to go ahead and pull out this fan real fast, and then we'll move on to the front panel. Alright, so we have our fan detached here. And look at this. This thing is absolutely freaking disgusting. Oh my god. Alright, we're going to go ahead and set this off the side. We'll probably end up using a new fan. I will clean this out for future builds, but yeah, we're going to use 120 mil back here instead of this tiny little 80 mil or 60, whatever size this is. Alright, so let's go ahead and pull our front panel off here. Alright, so here is our front panel. Needs a little bit of a wipe. It's got some smudges on here, but nothing too crazy. On the back, we have a good bit of dust, but nothing too crazy. So we'll go ahead and set this off to the side and see what the front looks like. Okay, so we do have a good bit of dust up here. Let's go ahead and get this fan out of here. Alright, so here is our front fan. It is also just as disgusting. Again, we will be going ahead and doing a 120 mil fan up front for better cooling. These things are just not adequate. So there's definitely a good bit of dust up front as well, along with the back. Check this out. Absolutely nasty. So we do have SD card readers, we have our USB 2.0 here, and then we have our CD drive. So we're going to go ahead and pull both of these out as well so that we can get this thing as clean as possible. Alright, so that's our back screws. Let's go ahead and move on to our front. Alright, so there's our SD reader. This thing is quite dusty and disgusting, so this will definitely be getting a nice good clean. Next up is our DVD drive. These are the last two screws. So this is definitely not as bad. Actually, this thing looks like it's in great shape, but it will of course be getting a nice little clean. So let's go ahead and start with cleaning out our case. So, got my trusty dusty soft bristle brush here. I'm going to go ahead and just start wiping this stuff away. I know you can't see me, but I do have a mask on just to be safe. Definitely don't want to be breathing this nasty crap in. Now, some people have been telling me, oh, you need to take this stuff outside and dust it off that way. I'm working in a shop for a reason. Making little messes like this is the name of the game. So there's definitely a bunch of particles going in the air here. Disgusting. Alright, so we'll set that offside for a minute. We're going to go ahead and get this cleaned up real fast and get this in the trash. Alright, so we got pretty much all our dust cleaned out of here. I'm going to go ahead and do the front real quick off camera, do everything else surrounding it, and go ahead and get our back panel back on here. And then we should be good to start cleaning off the rest of this, and then get our 120mm fans in here as well. Alright, so we have our platform for our motherboard back in, we have our disk drive back in, and we have our SD card reader back in as well. This thing cleaned up very nicely. Once we get it all nice and together, we will go ahead and clean the outside panels and whatnot. But for now, we are going to go ahead, we're going to get our power supply in here, and then we'll move on to our motherboard and the rest of the installation. Alright, so I did go over this thing to find out what kind of rating this thing has. I'm not seeing much of a rating on here. Keep in mind that if you guys ever encounter a PSU that does not have some kind of rating, whether it be white, bronze, gold, what have you, don't buy it. However, Thermaltake has a relatively kind of okay name. They're relatively reputable. For what we're running, this should be considered absolute overkill. So I did use a little bit of canned air to get this thing cleaned out. It did not do a whole lot for it, but we're going to go ahead and run it how it is. We're going to get this thing installed, and then we're going to move on to our fans that I want to get in here. Alright, so we do have our power supply installed. It is ready to go. We are going to go ahead and take a look at the 120mm fans that I decided to go with. Alright, so these are the fans that I decided to go with. They have a little bit of dust on them. I'm going to go ahead and clean these off real fast, but these are 120mm fixed RGB up here fans. I've had a pretty good experience with these. They are very cheap. You can get these for about 10 bucks for a 3 set on Amazon, and they always do fantastic. I've had some of these last years and years. So I'm going to go ahead, clean these off real quick, and then we will go ahead and proceed with installing these. Alright, so we got our fans installed. Going to go ahead and run some cable management here real quick, and then we will move on to the motherboard. Alright, so we got our cables ran. Hopefully I can do as much cable management as possible in this case, though it's not really possible with how this case is set up. But we will go ahead and try and make this thing look as beautiful as possible. Let's go to the motherboard. Alright, so here is our motherboard. She is quite dusty. Definitely have some massive dust spots right here. The rest of it looks relatively okay, but we'll go ahead and give this a good quick cleaning. Clean off our CPU, get some thermal paste on there, and get our cooler on there. Alright, so once I got this thing dusted off, I was actually able to go right over the CPU, and there is no thermal paste on here at all. So we're still going to take some IPA, clean this thing off, and get a fresh application of thermal paste on here. So as per usual, I'm going to be using 91% IPA. Going to go ahead and just get a couple dribbles on here. Use my trusty dusty towel and just give it a nice quick little wipe. Perfect. Alright, so we're going to set this off the side for a minute, and we're going to move on to our cooler. So impressions on the cooler. This thing is actually relatively clean. Kind of surprised, but of course we are lacking thermal paste very badly here. We'll go ahead, get this thing all nice and dust it off. Clean this remnants of what little thermal paste we have on here, and then get this thing installed onto the motherboard. Now the beautiful thing about these soft bristle brushes is you can really get in between these fins here on these heat sinks. It's wonderful to work with. Alright, we'll get some IPA on here and clean that thermal paste off. Alright, so we got all the thermal paste off here. There's definitely some discoloration on here. Hopefully this thing hasn't been running too hot. If this does not suffice to keep our temperatures under control, we will go ahead and put a different cooler on. But for now, let's get some thermal paste on that CPU and get this thing installed. Alright, so unfortunately I ran out of thermal paste and my PC shop is closed. So I'm going to go ahead and try and spread some of this around, and hopefully this is enough to cover our CPU. It looks like there's already a good bit on here, so hopefully I can get a nice good cover on here. Okay, so off camera, I was actually able to locate a little bit more thermal paste. In fact, I found 2 more tubes, and I was able to get this thing adequately covered. I unfortunately did not film it. Kind of a mistake on my part, but I'm not perfect. But this thing should be good to go now. Hopefully we can keep temps under control and get some good testing out of this thing. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with assembly. Alright, so we have everything nice and set up here. We're going to go ahead, we're going to get our motherboard installed and then get some RAM in here. All right, we got all our screws in. Let's go ahead and get our RAM in here as well. All right, easy peasy. Now we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna start hooking up all our connections and we will get our graphics card in last. All right, so we have the power for our CPU and motherboard plugged in and ready to go. We're going to go ahead and get our SATA cords in next. All right, so this SATA cord is going to go to our CD drive. And then our power from our power supply. All right, beautiful. Okay, we will go ahead and get our fans hooked up, and then we'll move to our front panel here. All right, so we got our fans nice and connected. Let's go ahead and get our front panel on and get all the rest of our connections hooked up. All right, so now that we got everything connected, we are going to go ahead and plug in our power reset and our LEDs. We will get our USB and our audio jacks all plugged in. And then we should be good to go ahead and move on to the graphics card. All right, so we have all of our connections installed. I will be going and tying all this off and zip tying it in the back. But I will save that for after I get the card installed. So let's go ahead and install our Radeon HD 5770. Okay, so before we do that, we're actually gonna have to remove this piece back here. Then we'll go ahead and just push this cable down, and this is going to go right underneath the graphics card, and this should fit in here beautifully. All right, next up is going to be our power for our graphics card. All right, easy enough. All right, so off camera, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of cable management here. Hopefully I can get this a little bit prettier on the inside, but there is no room on the back to do any kind of cable management. So I will do what I can. Hopefully I can make this look relatively decent. When I come back, this thing will be ready to test. All right, folks, so this is what she looks like. Cable management, obviously, major pain in the ass. I did my absolute best to do as much cable management as possible, but I kind of got to a point where I said, screw it, there's not a lot that I can do with the cable management. So as long as everything is out of the way and this thing works, that is my main concern. So I'm going to go ahead and get our side panel back on here, and we're going to get this thing hooked up, see if it can boot into the BIOS, and then we will go ahead and do my Samsung Evo SSD. We'll install some games on there and see how this thing runs. All right, so the big question here is, I bet everybody's asking, does this thing actually work? You found this stuff on the side of the road. Is it going to boot? Let's see the first power on if this thing will get into the BIOS. You guys ready for this? Oh, she looks so beautiful. Look at that. This thing looks absolutely incredible, and check it out. Amazing. So again, we are working with an AMD A6-3650. Looks like it's running at 2600 megahertz. Definitely not bad. This thing is absolutely stunning. We even have our big fan here. It's got some nice little blue LEDs here. They look kind of dim, but aside from that, this thing looks absolutely phenomenal. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get Windows on an SSD and get some games downloaded, and then we will start testing. Let's freaking go. Alright, you guys, so unfortunately, no matter what I do, drivers will not install for this card. I have a CD to manually install drivers. I tried doing it from Adrenaline. I tried using other modded sites and everything. Whenever I do get drivers installed for this thing, it just gives me a black screen, just like that. So, unfortunately, I think that there is something wrong with this card. So, the only other card that I have is another RX 580. This is a Sapphire Nitro card. This is an 8 gig card. This will at least allow us to fully utilize our CPU. Obviously, it's probably going to bottleneck it quite hard, but at least we'll be able to move on with testing. So I'm going to get this thing installed, and then we will hopefully be back and have some games ready to be tested. Alright folks, so we have our PC with our RX 580 all nice and powered on here. And we do have a slew of games that we are going to try today. This RX 580 can run pretty much any game, so I think this is going to be the best way to showcase our CPU. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead, we're going to get into some games here and see what kind of performance we can get out of this old gal. Alright, so our first game is going to be Dakar Desert Rally. This is a relatively demanding game, but it should be able to run with the CPU that we're using. So we will go ahead, we'll see how well this runs, see what kind of frames we get, and then move on to the next one, you guys. So this is all low settings. Of course, it's at 1080p. We are getting a little bit of hitching here and there. Seems like the faster you go, the more hitches you get, but seems like it's kind of leveling out right now. Even with the settings turned down all the way, this game actually still looks pretty darn impressive. So right now we are averaging right around 60 FPS. I do have VSync turned off. If we keep on getting these weird hitches, we'll go ahead and turn the VSync on and see if that helps stabilize our frames a little bit. Alright, let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and turn on VSync and see what happens. Alright, so we have VSync turned on. I have my refresh rate turned down to 50 Hertz, so hopefully that'll help stabilize our gameplay here. So it does appear to have smoothed it out slightly. I would say it's a playable experience, but it won't be the best playable experience. So I think that's a good first test. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game. Alright, so next up is Hunter Call of the Wild, and this game looks absolutely amazing. This is such a good looking game. This is a mixture of medium and low settings. Again, it's at 1080p, and we're getting right between 40 and 50 FPS. I don't really see any lagging or hitching or anything like that. It's kind of weird when you look around too fast. It has like a tendency to get slightly stuttery, but still playable. It could also be because I'm just used to playing at higher frames, but it definitely looks freaking awesome. This game looks so good. Look at this view. So we are running right around 50 FPS, even with all that texture in the background. Our CPU is at a cool 47C. Our GPU is right around 60C, and it just seems to be running absolutely phenomenal. So we'll see if we can't find an animal out here and get us a little bit of gunplay. But not gonna lie, it's difficult to find some animals out here in these woods. It could take you some time. But if you haven't played this game, you should definitely try it out. So we are still managing to stay between 40 and 50 FPS. So this is definitely not bad at all. Look at that water. It just looks so good. This is such a good looking game. And this is relatively cheap as well. So far, I am seeing no animals. I was hoping to catch a deer or a bear or whatever's in these woods, but unfortunately, I am not seeing. So, I think you guys get the point with this one. I feel like this is going to be an uneventful game testing. I just wanted to see how well this ran under a little bit of stress. So, this game is definitely, I would say, semi-demanding. Turning down the graphics settings definitely helps, but again, we are chilling right at 60 FPS, 48C on the CPU, 62C on our RX 580. Running absolutely phenomenal. So, we will go to the next one. Alright, so now we are in a rather demanding game. This is a game called Once Human. This game is an awesome game. I love playing this. This is one of those games that will definitely utilize your system, and it does seem to be running relatively good. We're getting right around 50 FPS, and this is a mixture of high, medium, and low settings. So, it definitely looks pretty darn good still. I have no complaints. It runs really well. There's no hitching, lagging, no weird stuff going on. So far, I would definitely say 100% playable and enjoyable. Absolutely phenomenal experience for a ground score motherboard, CPU, and RAM. That's crazy. So, as per usual, get a little bit of gameplay, see what things look like, see if we can get it to come down to its knees a little bit. Maybe I'll even turn up the graphics settings here, but so far seems to be running absolutely perfect. Okay, so I did bring our settings up a little bit, and we are now running a mixture of medium and high settings, and this thing is still running absolutely perfect. Seems like we're averaging right around 50 FPS. Our CPU temp is 43C. RX 580 is only at 60C. So if you have a system like this, or you come across a system like this and you're trying to play some Once Human, this will definitely do it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Alright, next up is Assetto Corsa. This game is always a demanding game. We are running at all medium to low settings, and it is running absolutely perfect. We are averaging right around between 60 and 70 FPS. Our GPU is 100% utilized, except for it does have some weird dips here and there. We're looking at 50C on our card, and we're looking at just under 40C on our CPU. This is absolutely a playable experience. This is crazy. I honestly did not expect this CPU to do so good as it is right now. So we'll just get a little bit of gameplay on here, and we will move on to our last game. So it looks like we're holding right around 70 FPS. You could probably lower the settings a tad bit more and get a little bit more performance out of this. This is I'm kind of speechless. What a good experience. So this just goes to show that you can absolutely 100% budget game and have a good time. Absolutely crazy. Let's go ahead and move on to our last game, folks. Alright, so our last game is going to be Tomb Raider. This is always a good one to test. It always is going to show you exactly what your system can do. This is a mixture of medium and low settings, and we are getting relatively good performance here. We're running right around 30 to 40 FPS. We're looking about 60C on our graphics card and nearly 50C on our CPU. So we are definitely doing relatively good here. We have jumped up into the 70s. And now it's holding steady right around between 50 and 60 FPS. Not bad at all. Alright, so this is actually running incredibly good. I cannot believe how well this is running. So there is our final score there, folks. Still relatively good for a CPU of its age. Obviously, this came out about 15 years ago. The CPU is quite old. But I'm still thoroughly impressed. This thing definitely performed much better than I thought. Again, this just goes to show that you do not need to spend ridiculous amounts of money on a gaming PC in order to have a good experience. Stuff like this blows my mind. So, with that being said, you guys, this is going to be it for testing. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This, as usual, was a very fun one to do. I love doing these older PCs and seeing what exactly they can do. It's crazy how some of these social media people say that you need to spend at least $500 to get a good gaming experience. Obviously, that is not true. You could probably get this system for around $200, and that's with a keyboard, monitor, and mouse. Absolutely insane. If you want to game on a budget, take a look at older DDR3 systems. You will be pleasantly surprised. Until next time, you guys, I hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe in the world.